What up YouTube, it's Misery Hates Company. In this video, we are going to talk about Captain Marvel. Now, she was pretty heavily nerfed, but there are just a few people that are still actually doing really well with using Captain Marvel for both PvP and PvE. Now, she's nowhere near as good as she was, so I will bring that disclaimer up front. I am not saying she's meta by any chance, but if you do main her and you're still looking for a very solid build where you can get into the top 50, maybe top 30, 20 in PvP for both Dimension Duels and or Omega War, this build can help you do that. All right, so first things first, let's go ahead and start with the easier stuff, which is the enhanced potential. So first thing you want to do is max out the attack at the first one, attack at the second one. Now, if you're playing her from scratch, like this is your first hero, you're going to want to max attack all the way, which is as much as possible. And then, but if you're maining her as, or making her main after already playing the game or after developing several other heroes, I would definitely prioritize your attack and then defense pierce pretty heavily after that. After you've done your defense pierce, and then I would actually come up here and get the accuracy rating, and then I'll go back down for the stam recovery, and then I would just go ahead and fill out the rest because it's kind of okay. But I mean, you're going to want the stats overall, but that's how I would prioritize. It would be attack, and then the defense pierce, accuracy, and then the stam recovery. Moving on to her specializations. So the first one we want to talk about is this green one, which is pretty interesting. So when critically damaged, so whenever you take critical damage, become invincible for 2 seconds and restores a % of your max HP, but a cooldown of 600 seconds. So very, very heavy cooldown, but in a 1v1 or even in Omega War or any war, Alliance War for that matter, this will save your life. I mean, that is huge. That can turn the tides of any battle. So that's going to be your first go-to spec on Captain Marvel. So the next one is actually going to be this one, the binary power energy conversion. So this is increasing ultimate gauge recovery by 5% or a percent when your HP is 50% or higher. So the higher your HP, then you get more of your ultimate gauge recovery faster. So it's good to be at topped off health. Which also means, a little sneak peek to the companions we'll talk about later, is Ultron might actually be a really good option because you can get that shield really early on and help maintain your 50% health or higher for longer in at least Dimension Duels. But we'll talk about companions a little bit later. So the next one I want to talk about is this one. So battle skill, dodge prediction. Decreased light speed movement class skill cooldown by however many seconds after using a dodge skill. So this is going to allow you to get these light speed movement cooldowns a little bit faster. Now, this is actually not the main skill set you're going to be using in terms of your gear, what you're going for. Well, that's at least for the build that I'm recommending. So this is a good option. I'm not saying this is a must. The rest of these are kind of, it depends on your play style, depends on where you're at in the game. But this is a good option as well because you're going to be using, I want to say at least 3 of these light speed movement skills and or at least 2, which is going to get you that cooldown, which is great. The next one you're going to want to look at, and now this one I've actually been leaning more towards as a pretty solid option as like a guaranteed third. But this recovers the dodge gauge by 4% when using a light speed movement class skill. Cooldown is 10 seconds. Again, you're always going to have at least a couple of these light speed skills. And the class cooldown is, or I'm sorry, the cooldown for this specialization is 10 seconds, which you're not going to be getting that skill back any faster, even with maxed cooldown. So you're basically always going to be able to get your dodge rate quicker, which is great. So this is the other option I would recommend. This is also a good stat for Captain Marvel, is increase attack by a % amount when battle lasts for 6 seconds. In almost any case, your battle is going to last longer than 6 seconds, especially in Omega War, obviously. So this is just a free % attack that you're going to get. But in Dimension Duels, unless you get blown up right away, you're probably going to last longer than 6 seconds. At least I would certainly hope so. So this is a really good trait for just a pretty decent amount of attack up front. So one last spec that I actually would recommend, just as an alternative, depending on where you're at, like I said, is this one, Photon Energy, Photon Acceleration. So increase attack by a % amount when flying, and then defense by a % amount when landed. So if you're in the air, you do more damage with attack, but if you're on the ground, you take less damage because you're raising your defense. So this specialization is actually pretty decent. Once it's fully maxed out, you do get a pretty decent amount of stats, but you do have to kind of think about, am I going for an attack? Do I want to go in the air? I want to say this would probably be easier to manage in one of the wars, Omega War or Alliance War. It might be a little hairy in Dimension Duel, but still a good option nonetheless. So that's going to do it for our specializations. We talked about our enhanced potential. Now let's jump over to gear. So when it comes to gear on Captain Marvel, so the There's two main builds that you could use. The build I'm focusing on and all the gear and recommendations I'm using are off one specific type of skill set. Now, this is not the only build. This is just the one that I'm going to recommend for this video for right now. After doing some research, this feels like it's going to be doing the most damage. It's going to look a little awkward, I'm going to be honest, up front, because you're going to have more skills of a certain other type, but all your big damage skills are this one. I'm going to stop talking in code and jump right into it. So for this video, the gear that I'm going to recommend in terms of specials, so the mega whales, if you will, is actually going to be Rise of the East. This gives you attack, photon charge skill +7, and then the cosmic energy class skill +7 as well, which is fantastic. That's what we're looking for in this build. Like I said, this is not the only build, but this is the build that we're looking at for this video, is the cosmic energy classes. So in terms of the best regional gear for this specific build, you have two options. First is Dark Domain. So again, you get the cosmic energy class skill. This one gives you defense pierce. And then the other option is going to be Midgardia, which it will give you the same thing, but crit rate. Really totally depends on if you have a ton of crit rate in your on your gear itself without the 3-set bonus, or like if you have Midgardia that has a ton of defense pierce, then you don't need the crit rate, obviously, or vice versa when it comes to Dark Domain. But both are valid for this build. Now, for the low spender and or free to play, a good option, we actually have two here, is going to be Miss Marvel. So this gives you crit rate, which is fantastic. And then Photon Blaster skill +6, which we'll review the skill momentarily. This is a very good skill and one of your cosmic energy skills. The other one I wanted to mention as a decent option would be Carol Corpse. Carol. Again, same thing, crit rate, and then the Photon Blast skill +6. So great options there. So that's it for the gear. Let's go ahead and jump into the skills so it makes a little bit more sense. The main build that I'm going to recommend is as follows. So think of this as kind of like a rotation, but again, if assuming you're not autoing literally everything, use them as needed. So the first skill we are going to have is a light speed movement skill, energy impact, cosmic recharge. So soars up and strikes the ground, dealing a % damage, knocks down the attacked enemy, and recovers her ultimate skill gauge. Now, this is fantastic because it's going to be the first skill you use, and you're going to get some of your ultimate skill gauge back already. And it's an iframe, so untargetable while moving with this skill. So this is a really great option. Next one is another iframe. So Photon Flight, this is another light speed movement skill. Again, this is why I said it's a little awkward. You're gonna have a ton of light speed movement, but you're not actually gonna be doubling down on that. But we'll get to that here in a little bit. So what this does is you fly at the enemy and you deal a % damage, medium guard break, pretty low cooldown, decent stamina requirement, but you are untargetable while using this skill, which is great. While we're talking about iframes, let's go ahead and get a third one. So Mighty Flight. This one has an 18.8 second cooldown. This is with, like I said, close to no gear. So your cooldown could, if you have higher cooldown, this actually could be a pretty decent option or a pretty decent cooldown. So charges forward, causes an energy explosion and deals a % because I don't have it maxed out right now, and knocks down the enemy attack untargetable while using the skill, which is great. Oh, while moving with this skill. So while you're actually moving, you are untargetable. Now I would mention that if you want a slightly less of a cooldown, but a little bit less damage, this skill does basically the same thing. It's in the same little category here. So instead of doing Mighty Flight, you would actually pick Mighty Flight Lightspeed Dash. Again, it just has a little bit, it has about a 4-second less of a cooldown, but again, you're looking at just under 100% damage. So you lose a decent amount of damage there, and you are still untargetable while moving with this skill. So that's a decent option. I've seen Captain Marvels do both of these. So either one, personal preference there. I kind of like this one because you do go behind them and then do a little explosion instead of like punching them in the face. But again, totally, that is just my personal preference in watching this. The next one is where we actually get to some of our big boy damage. So Photon Buster is going to be focal energy shot. So this deals a ton of damage up front, very low cooldown at 13.7 and decent required stamina at 24. Now, your biggest skill is going to be for cosmic energy, and this is not even maxed out. This is at level 10 and already does 2,447% damage, and it increases the damage dealt over time. The only thing I will note with this skill is that you absolutely do not want to use this on a Black Widow. Almost anyone else, you'll probably be fine. I'm kind of hesitant when it comes to Iron Man. If he has his, basically use it after he does his little swinging thing when he's untargetable. After that, you'll be fine. But it does an absolute ton of damage. Or you can still use it on those two heroes after you knock them down and or break their guard. but this is a fantastic finisher, and really you could probably one-shot someone if you build out fully correctly. So that's going to do it for her skills. So the last two things I want to talk about are the companions, and then her the stats you want to go for Captain Marvel, because they're a little different, and they're different than they were originally. So for the companions, like I said, I would actually recommend Ultron as a very decent free-to-play option. You do get the crit damage buff just for having him equipped. Collection stat is max damage rate, which is fine. The real reason you're going to be using Ultron is for his shield, 32% of max HP for 10 seconds. Like I said, your goal with Captain Marvel in her current state is to get her ultimate as fast as possible, because you just gain so much attack and defense. You want that up as much as possible. So this is a very good option in order, like the specializations that we use, to try to keep getting her ultimate faster. I've seen some where you actually get the ultimate twice, and that's really awesome at high level of gameplay. Some of the other options, I mean, obviously Hulk is a fantastic option for Dimension Duels. I would even argue that Moon Knight is still a fantastic stat stick option if you get him to 5 or 6 stars, because I mean this percent attack is just huge. Some other options could very well be, where is he? Oh, so the other option I would mention is Icarus, obviously. So especially once you get into his bonus effects at 5 and 6 star, where you get the PvP damage increase or decrease, but then his skill is just a flat amount of damage, which is huge. That's fantastic. And it's Cosmic Blast, which has nothing to do with like interchanging, but it just sounds like it fits with Captain Marvel in my opinion. And then the other ones, you're going to want to equip the normal ones in terms of their fixed effect in terms of attack, defense, and HP, or whatever you have available that gives you the most stats in those options, as well as keeping note that you are going to want to get a decent bonus effect. So obviously I don't really care about XP gain when I'm using it and for PvP or just outside of leveling, and then supervillain damage is kind of meh, but these are just the best stat sticks that I have at the current time. Now the last thing I wanted to talk about are her stats overall. So for Captain Marvel, you used to want to like build her almost like a Spider-Man, where you max out dodge and just spam dodge, and you just never get hit between your iframes and your active dodge and just your passive dodge. So with the dodge rate, I want to, in my opinion, in my research, I would aim for roughly 50 to 60% dodge. That's going to be just enough to be annoying for people to have some accuracy to hit you. It's also going to allow you to be, again, kind of flexible and dodge certain skills on occasion. So that's going to be your kind of go-to spot. After that, you really want to focus on your ultimate gauge recovery. Like I said, your bread and butter is your ultimate. It has a huge radius and gives you a very big attack and defense bonus at the end of it. So it's a very good ultimate. Outside of that, you definitely want to focus on cooldown, as well as crit rate, crit defense, and defense pierce, which those last 4 are pretty similar to almost anyone when it comes to cooldown, defense pierce, crit rate, crit damage. And you definitely want to have a certain amount of accuracy so you can deal with those annoying, pesky Spider-Man. But those are going to be the stat effects that you want to focus on. Like I said, ultimate gauge is a huge one. You want to get that with your feet. That would be fantastic if you can get the ultimate gauge as a bonus stat. So that's going to go ahead and do it for my guide on Captain Marvel. She was the very last one that I needed to do, but she's also the hardest one to do because she was nerfed so heavily. But I did want to go ahead and take a look at it. Make sure I spent enough time to give you a decent build. Like I said, she is not top tier, but this is a very valid option. I actually have someone on my server who is frequently in the top 30 for both PvP and Dimension Duels and Omega War, who does main Captain Marvel and follows this build with, like I said, some of the interchangeable specialization traits. I hope this video helps you. My heart goes out to the Captain Marvel mains. You guys are the real heroes, because she was easily broken in like a really good way. And just untouchable, where you could just take on like the whole team in Omega War, and now it feels like she was overly nerfed. So hopefully we do get some changes. Obviously, that I'm optimistic, since we just got some very nice changes to Captain America. Doctor Strange sounds like the audience is kind of hit or miss on that in terms of the community, and maybe he needs a little bit more adjustments. But I am optimistic that Captain Marvel is on that list of heroes that needs to be adjusted, hopefully in the near future, but it is what it is. So if you thought this video was helpful, make sure you smash that like button. If you haven't seen all of my other builds, this does conclude my full series on it, so I will leave a card at the top that will link you to all of them. So if you are working on any hero in particular, I have a video out now for you. especially with squad battle coming and the alliance raid already here. You're going to want to make sure you're moving in the right direction for all of your heroes, and I have a build for you for each and every one of them. Last but not least, if you haven't seen my video on what changes I would make to Dark Zone to make it valuable again in Marvel Future Revolution, check out this video right now, because in my opinion, there's some pretty decent ideas, and it would definitely add value back to the players and to Dark Zone as a whole. So check this video out right now.